In Magic the Gathering, some creatures are so terrifying and so shambling that you have to rank them. And today, we're talking about all of the rare and mythic skeletons that exist in MTG.
That's right. I don't want to freak anybody out, but there's a spooky skeleton inside you right now. The video starts right now.
Highest level of gratitude to our patrons who power the channel through Patreon. Check out the Patreon link in the description to learn about monthly giveaways, VIP Discord access, and even our official playmat. Hello and welcome to The Day.
Thank you for spending your time with us.
I'm Jake.
I'm Joel. Welcome back to another episode of Jake and Joel Are Magic. This is our Halloween video, everybody. Take it in, embrace it, enjoy it. This is as spoopy as it gets over here. But before we get into our ranking of skeletons, if you would go down there, hit that like button if you like the video. By the end of it, hit that dislike button if you don't.
Some of these skeletons lack brains. All of them have bones. We're going to try to find which ones have the brawn and which ones have legs and EDH. And we're going to try to rank them. We're ranking them all against each other, so don't think that we're ranking, each skeleton against whatever the best card in MTG is, or else they'd all be down at the rotten tier. But today we're going to try to find out, Joel, what are our ranks tonight?
Let's get into it. So we have got our ranking system over here on the left, right above me. Let me get out of the way. Shambling, Jake. This is the best tier. These are our shambling skeletons. They are the best possible skeletons you could run in Commander. Under that, we have our Bonational Speakers. Got them. Under that, middle tier. These are just solid. We're calling that Lazy Bones. Below that, we've got our Numbskulls. And if they're at the bottom of the list, Jake, those skeletons are rotten.
Probably avoid the rotten ones for EDH. Joel, what is our first skeleton we have this evening? Let's go ahead and get right into it.
First up, we have got Bone Dragon, 2 black, 3 other for a 5/4 flyer. You can pay 5 mana, exile 7 other cards from your graveyard to return this 5/4 to the battlefield tapped. They're just like, how do we make this worse? And you write some text, and then they're like, okay, how do we make it worse again? And you're like, I don't know, we can make it 7 cards instead of a card from your graveyard. Yeah, do that. Oh, and then when it returns to the battlefield, let's tap it too. What a mythic.
Yeah, oh man, that's a good way to say it. What a mythic. No, This card is honestly, dude, it's awful, and it could be a rare, and I see how it was designed.
This could be an uncommon
for constructed. It was designed for limited. You're going to be running 4 of these, and you're going to hope that you fill your graveyard up in such a way that you can recur this. But even then, I mean, it's just a 5/4 flyer for 5. There's like better dragons and stuff. And in EDH, this does get so much worse. And the problem is your graveyard in many decks is a second hand. I mean, like, I want to put it at rotten. Maybe we need to be nice because it's a mythic and put it at Numbskull, but it is an EDH list.
Yeah, we'll see. This is an EDH list. This card is absolute garbage. I can't really justify running this in either a dragon deck or a skeleton deck. We'll stay reactive. We are judging these all against each other, sort of in a skeleton bubble. But this one, Jake, it's just
let's say this. I mean, if you're running this card, you're running it in a deck, right? You're running it in a deck that has black.
Oh, okay.
No. Okay, so you're running it in a deck that has black, which means you're going to be running it in a situation where you should have recursion. I mean, recursion is built into the card. So there is like a case for, well, I would run a card like this if I didn't have any sort of graveyard synergy.
If I'm not running good recursion. It's not even close to good recursion. It is, I mean, the rate for a recurred character is 5 mana. So if you look at this is 5 mana plus threshold gone. Like, you gotta kill 7 cards in your... Yeah, I don't know. There's not any reason for putting any more time on Bone Dragon. Let's look at Karinette.
Yeah, so 1 black, 1 other for a 1/1, and it has a fun ability here. I do like this card from Tempest. 2 black, 2 other, remove Karinette and target creature from the game. That creature's controller may pay 2 to counter this ability. Use this ability only if Karinette is in your graveyard. So what's cool about this, what I do like about this, is for sweaty decks, right? Like sweaty, like we're using all mana all the time.
Yeah.
You can pull a nice little fast one with this card. Now, you do have to have mana to do it, right? That is where it becomes a little wonky. But if you're running this alongside other similar strategies, having this as like a little bit of redundancy to kind of make things really wonky for an opponent and on a turn could be like really good, dude.
Yeah, I wanted to see if there was any Oracle text or anything that said this can't be done at instant speed, because that would make it really, really bad. But this ability, I think, is one that on the surface looks awesome. And I'm like, oh, Karinette is dope. But I think that it would hit a little less often than you think it would in your mind. However, I really like this as a sleeper card. 2 mana for just a 1/1, some fodder that you want in the graveyard anyway. Use this to cast any of your spells that require you to sacrifice a creature. And then you've got this 4 mana exile spell that is just sitting in your graveyard ready to go. You just got to wait until they're tapped out or only have 1 mana available. Side note,
yeah, it is kind of like a one and done, right? You're only doing this once. So it does seem like the kind of thing where it almost seems like a meta play to me. It seems like if you're in a meta that everybody is always like never leaving any mana up, they're just always just their strategy is online, then this could disrupt.
This art is so cool to me. This is harkening back to this old style of art where they were not afraid to lean into the scary visuals. It didn't need to be kid friendly necessarily. I saw this, Jake, when I was prepping this video for us, and I immediately tweeted this card and was just like, well, found the perfect spooky Halloween art. Where do you think, Jake, that Karinette resides?
You know, I love the ability. I do think it's a little bit expensive, so I would put it at like a Lazy Bones. I think that's where it lives for me.
I do. I think that I want to, when I first read it, I want to go, oh my God, this is Shambling or Bonevational Speaker, period. But I do think realistically that exile is only going to happen occasionally, and you can't really count on it. But it'll be a fun trick when it does. Jake, this one, next up, we've got one from the Theros plane that was reprinted in Commander Precons. Champion of Stray Souls, 2 black, 4 other for a 4/4 skeleton warrior. You can pay 5 and tap it, sacrifice X other creatures, and return X target creature cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. So if you can create a lot of fodder, pay 5, tap it, sack all that fodder, return huge creatures. That's got some play. And then 7 mana, you can put Champion of Stray Souls, on top of your library from your graveyard, so it comes back. This is a creature that they really want to exile. Off the rip, the ability is sick. Really good rate of return for the mana. And in a deck that's playing this, you're going to have sacrificable things that you don't mind sacrificing. But 6/6 for 4. I mean, a 4/4 for 6, rather. 7 mana to get it back on top of your library, not even straight into your hand.
Hey, if that were Bone Dragon, though, that ability on the bottom would cost like you'd have to exile 15 cards to do that.
Slap yourself in the face, throw your deck across the room, and pay 10 mana.
Yeah, no, I think the card is fine, but I think the card really shines with that first ability, right? The 2 black, 3 other, sacrifice X other creatures, return X target creature cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. That is the ability that your opponent is trying to remove this for.
That's why you're playing this.
So yeah, you know, I think the card is very good in that versatility, that 7 mana, you know, late game being able to just get it back from the yard and put it on top of the library at instant speed EOT. I like
recursion,
it, dude.
The recursion is cool.
Yeah. I would put this at easily Bonevational Speaker, and maybe just the power toughness holds it back from being Shambling, and maybe the casting costs.
Exactly. I think it's a little too chunky in the casting cost and a little slow in its return ability to really move up into that Shambling tier for me. I think, though, it is a strong commander card that would be a lot of fun to play, quite honestly. Jake, this one's kind of a new one. That's Death Tyrant from Adventures in the Forgotten Realms.
Yeah, 1 black, 4 other here. Death Tyrant, creature beholder skeleton. I love to see skeletons continuing getting support. 4/6 here, menace. Negative energy cone. Whenever an attacking creature you control or a blocking creature an opponent controls dies, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. And then this also has some fun recursion. It's a little less mana intensive. 1 black and 5 other, return Death Tyrant from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. I like it, dude. I like it. It's a 5 cost. It's a 4/6. It has menace. It almost speaks to like the power creep of MTG in a way, right? I mean, it goes wide. It has recursion. I really don't know what more you want out of a skeleton.
Yeah,
maybe
this
lower casting cost.
Yeah, but even then, I think that is, I don't mind this costing 5. This looks good. I mean, it attacks with menace. If it dies, it leaves a 2/2 black zombie creature token behind. That also applies to any other attacking creatures you control and blocking creatures opponents control. It is creating tokens, and for 6 mana at instant speed, so your opponent's EOT, it can return from the graveyard to the battlefield tap. Jake, do we have our first Shambling skeleton?
I think we do. And I mean, we were just talking about how good the previous was.
Yeah.
And it was, you know, that even puts it on top of your library. This puts it right onto the yard tap.
That's what I'm saying.
Or the battlefield tap.
That's why I thought that Champion was a little too slow. Just putting it onto top of your library, I'd rather it go to hand. But for
it's
one
still a fun EOT if you have nothing to do. If you're
sure.
like, man, I'm in top deck mode and I know that creature's there.
Right.
Then sure. But
and
yeah,
you
Death Tyrant's strictly better, dude.
Tokens.
It's just... It doesn't have a fun sacrifice outlet built into it, but it is better than Champion of Stray Souls.
Yeah, I like it. I like it up there at the top of the list. Jake, Demilich is up next. A blue, and a blue for a 4/3 skeleton wizard. It's got this spell costs blue less to cast for each instant and sorcery spell you've cast this turn. So, fairly easy in Commander to turn this casting cost off to just be a 0 cost spell, or just a blue or 2 blue pretty easily.
Sure.
Then whenever it attacks, you exile up to 1 target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard, you copy it and you can cast the copy, and you can cast Demilich from your graveyard by exiling 4 instants and or sorcery cards from your graveyard in addition to paying its other costs. So it's got some nice recursion, although it's sort of a backdoor recursion with instants and sorceries being exiled from your graveyard. And we've come a long way from Bone Dragon, huh?
We have come a long way from Bone Dragon. I mean, this is only 4, whereas Bone Dragon is 7, right? I mean, The card is very strong, though. That copy effect is very good. If you have some big splashy spells, then you're really going to like this. And like you said, you can cast other spells leading up to, you know, mitigating the casting cost of this card to get, you know, a 4/3. No evasion here, no menace, no flying or anything like that. But that's not really why you're casting this card. I think this card is very strong, and I think it would easily be at Bonevational Speaker is where I'm kind of leaning. But maybe even undervaluing that copy a little bit, there might be a case for Demilich to be Shambling.
Yeah, I agree with you on Bonevational Speaker, Jake. I think that, honestly, blue is throwing me off. I know that this spell could potentially be free. That. If you can storm for 4... instants and sorceries in your main phase, I mean, you're casting Demilich for free. And then if you untap with it, I think that's another part of it too, is I need it to be hasty, or you have to untap with it.
Yeah.
That attack trigger is what you want. And then you're probably going to get 1 attack with it, because that's going to get blocked and killed so fast. But maybe you copied some like Ultimatum, some dope, ridiculous spell, Fated Return, or some kind of In Garrick's Wake, you know. That would be a really good... In Garrick's Wake, honestly, would be a great target, because it would clear the board and Demilich could get through. But yeah, Jake, I think you're not... I think you're not wrong with Bonevational Speaker. I think Demilich is right under there. Here's another Mythic. We got a lot of Mythic skeletons.
Wow, we have a red skeleton here. 2 red, 1 other, a 3/1 flyer. Flame Skull can't block. It has Rejuvenation. When Flame Skull dies, exile it. If you do exile the top card of your library until end of turn, you may play one of those cards.
Yeah. I
That
really like this ability. It's that impulse draw, you know? It's that death. I mean, you could sack this and get a little impulse draw and be like, nah, I don't like that one. I'll just recast Flame Skull. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's very strong. I think it's very strong.
You're going to have the mana to play with in Commander. However, it is just 1 card, right? And once you do pick a card to cast that's not Flame Skull, that's pretty much it. You're done with your Flame Skull fun.
Yeah.
The shenanigans are over.
For me, actually, after reading it, not much recursion, no recursion built into the card. So for me, it feels kind of like a lazy bones, teetering on like a numbskull.
Yeah, it does feel like it's in between these two. Is it as good as Karinette? I'm sort of split because it does at least, it's a creature, so it can help you sack stuff, activate any other stuff that, requires death of your own creatures. It can't attack until it dies. It can't block for you, so you're not going to be able to just like throw it in the way. That would be my favorite. If it could block, you could just block, die, recast. Block, die, recast, and that's probably why they said they can't block. I think it's right there in the middle.
Impulse draw is good.
Right.
Velocity, we always talk about, is a very good thing.
Yeah.
But I do think that the card falls short in not being able to. I mean, it's funny because it has this spell called Rejuvenation, but the card actually dies. Like, the card doesn't come back. Somehow Rejuvenation is tied to you being able to draw a card.
Yeah, I don't know. Jake, this one's been around for a long time, man, and it's banned in Modern. Golgari Grave Troll, a green and 4 for a 0/0 troll skeleton. When it enters the battlefield, you put a +1/+1 counter on it, or it enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it for each creature card in your graveyard, and you can pay 1, remove a +1/+1 counter from it, and regenerate it. And it dredges 6, so you can just recast it if
that is the text right there that matters. Like, there is a lot of text on Golgari Grave Troll, and the only text, in my opinion, that matters is Dredge 6.
Yep.
This is like the big daddy dredge card that is going to fill up your graveyard super fast, and it's just, if you are in a graveyard strategy where you are trying to like fill your yard up, whether it's like some sort of Muldrotha type effect, some sort of like Carador type effect, any graveyard centric deck with green is probably going to want a Golgari Grave Troll. And for that reason alone, I would easily put it at Motivational Speaker. It does have Regenerate as well, so that is almost legs for Shambling. I mean, this card, when it's banned and everything, it kind of does speak to the power level of what we're working with here.
Yeah, it's man, this is just so good. In the strategy of the deck that this lives in, this is an all-star. You're putting 6 cards from the top of your library right into your graveyard. You're getting this back, and that's if it happened to die. It comes back stronger for that 5 mana. You still just pay the 1 to regenerate it if it does happen to die. I mean, it's just like ultimate defense, and it's helping you refill your graveyard so that you can then go on offense. I really love this card. I think if any of these are going to get Shambling, I think this belongs up there. Do you see a big argument for it to go into second place? Yeah. I think it lives there.
I mean, it has Regenerate, which is the big pesky effect, and then it also has that Dredge 6, which is just so huge. Much gas for any deck that wants graveyard filled up.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so this is through the lens of EDH. So next we have Gutterbones. It's 1 black, 2/1. Gutterbones enters the battlefield tapped, and for 1 black and 1 other, return Gutterbones from your graveyard to your hand. Activate this ability only during your turn, and only if an opponent lost life this turn. So there is some, it's a low-cost creature, comes out early, matters not a lot in EDH, in my opinion. However, it does have recursion built in, which is probably going to save it from those bottom 2 tiers.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really cheap recur. You've got 2 mana to recur to your hand, 1 mana back onto the battlefield. Combine this with any altar and like a Blood Artist type of Aristocrats effect, and you are just your Gutterbones is sort of this like this marble in this machine that's just constantly clicking back over and doing its thing again, and just death by 1,000 paper cuts. And so this one for that sort of strategy is hugely valuable. In and of itself, it doesn't do much, but that's like the purpose of the skeleton, right? In the lore, and from a flavor standpoint, this is meant to be sort of this like familiar that exists to die and then just come right back infinitely. Alone, right. It's not doing anything. In an army or in some sort of a combo, that's really where you're getting a lot of value. So how do we then, Jake, value Gutterbones on this list? I mean, does it live at Motivational Speaker just because it's going to be one of these? It's really, it's the rare version of Reassembling Skeleton, which is already that's like a common skeleton all-star in Commander. So I feel like this deserves to be up there.
Yeah, and like we said in the beginning of the video, just a reminder, we are only reviewing the rare and mythic skeletons. So like Reassembling Skeleton, which is an all-star skeleton, isn't even on this list. But yeah, I think for me, like my gut is putting it at Motivational Speaker, and then also like kind of leaning toward Lazy Bones. So if you're at Motivational, then I think that's probably where it's going to live.
Yeah, I think we agree on that one, where that one should go. Jake, this one's kind of new. Lightning Skelemental. This was from Modern Horizons 1. Yeah, red, black for a 6/1 elemental skeleton. It's got trample, it's got haste. When it deals combat damage to a player, that player discards 2 cards, and at the beginning of the end step, you sacrifice Lightning Skelemental. So it's just like this big FU to one player comes in, attacks, deals damage, makes them discard 2, and then you're like, all right, that's my turn. Sacrifice Lightning Skelemental, pass.
Yeah, for that reason, I kind of hate it. I can see exactly how the card was designed. It's clearly made for like a low to the ground modern black-red discard deck, right? This is like an excellent 3 mana to get in, hit for 6.
Well, and they sort of like stapled a Lightning to a ball lightning. That's what they wanted to do.
This is a card that back in the day when you were running stuff like Lightning Elemental and all of those kind of decks, you would have 1,000,000% built this into it. It would have been great. It's like a ball lightning. Yeah,
absolutely.
So yeah, I mean, however, you're not running any of those cards in Commander. So I think sadly Lightning Skelemental, though it does read really well, it's just not built for this format.
Well, and it's dope. It's just the kind of card, you know how I came up playing super aggro, super discard kind of strategies. It's the kind of card that I love. But yeah, in Commander, unless you've got some sort of like really repetitive recursion engine going that's cheap and you can return this to the battlefield every single turn while also continuing to further your board state and further your game, then yeah, this could be a dope card. But yeah, I think in general it lands at Numbskull. It's not quite rotten for me though, because casting this, I'd be like, all right, yeah, it's a solid little hit. You got, especially if you're casting it early, it's a 6 chunk of damage and then 2 cards out of somebody's hand.
I mean, if you have a Furnace of Wrath or Fiery Emancipation on the battlefield, and then it's like hitting and it's dealing 3 times that damage, then at that point, the card has some legs. But yeah, on surface level, without any other cards taken into consideration, just kind of, I think Numbskull's an appropriate spot for it.
Yeah, agreed. Jake, next up, we've got a Vampire Skeleton. Let's get 2 spooky creature types together.
Oh my gosh, I feel like this was in Modern Horizon or OG Modern Horizons or Modern Masters. That's what it was. This card was like the worst card to pull in that set. But let's see how it measures up. 2 black, 4 other for a 3/3 flyer. So far 6 cost for a 3/3. Whenever skeletal vampire ETBs, create 2 1/1 black bat creature tokens with flying. So that's kind of cool.
We've got that's a good return on mana just off the rip. 5 power that's all flying for 6 mana. Yeah, love that.
Yeah. And then 2 black and 3 other for sacrifice a bat, create 2 1/1 black bat creature tokens with flying, and then sack a bat to regenerate skeletal vampire. So honestly, once you read all of this, the power and toughness versus the casting costs, the card is very good. So the reason it wasn't good to pull in Modern Masters is because it wasn't a very expensive card, but for EDH, this card is honestly pretty excellent. I like everything that's going on here. A little mana intensive for that sack a bat to create 2 1/1 black bat creature tokens with flying to get that ability. That's a little bit expensive, but the fact that once you land this card, you can sack a bat to keep it around until they exile it. I mean, that's very good.
Yeah, this card can be a huge menace. This is a snowball type effect of where, you want to cast it for 6. That's already a lot. You already have 5 though if you did cast this, but you're not going to necessarily be able to do that until the next turn. So your opponents are suddenly trying to ace skeletal vampire, or at least ace those 2 1/1 black bat tokens so that you're not able to sack a bat and keep skeletal vampire alive. However, for the mana, like I said, I really love the amount of power. That's all very flying, very avoidance. That's what we want. We don't just want 3/3 and 2/1/1s on the ground. That's not going to do what we want to do. But then you get this like little engine where you can dump mana into it and just start multiplying your bats like bat hydras. Plus, it's pesky and it sticks around, Jake. You know, I don't think it's going to be a game winner, but I do think it could be a pesky creature if left unchecked. So I'm living around like Lazy Bones or Bonevational Speaker with this one. Where are you thinking?
I was also leaning toward Bonevational just because at the end there you were talking about how, it's not going to close out a game. Right. It is going to be very pesky. So it's not going to be, right at the tip top. However, I do think it's a good card. I think it kind of lives in like a Lazy Bones 0.5, like on the way. But for the sake of keeping it, concise, let's go ahead and keep it at Bonevational Speaker. I think if you were trying to do anything like a Tribal Skeletons, you would probably want this card in the deck.
Yeah, I would agree, though there's not a ton of support. I think that Tribal Skeletons could be supported. Jake, Skeleton Scavengers is a rare from Stronghold. Never reprinted, only one printing, but it is a rare. It's 1 black, 2 other for a 0/0 skeleton. It comes into play with 1+1/+1 counter on it. Then it has an ability. You can pay 1 mana for each +1/+1 counter on it to regenerate it and then put a +1/+1 counter on it. So it scales up if you want to keep dumping mana into it. It blocks, it survives, it gets a little more powerful. I'm assuming because more death is happening and more skeletons are joining this army as they scavenge what's left on the battlefield. I love the flavor of this one. I love the art of this one. This one, not just from a gameplay aspect, is near the top of the list for me from a flavor and art standpoint alone.
Yeah, I do like the flavor and the art of it, but that ability scaling up, I don't know how many times you're going to be able to regenerate this. Like, once you've done it twice, really, it's going to be pretty expensive, and you're probably just going to be like, all right, well, buy Skeleton Scavengers. So for me, that's where it kind of like holds the card back for me. I don't think it's an unplayable card, and I think that it does have some legs, but, comes into play with 1/1/1 counter on it. So
yeah, for 3 mana.
Right. I mean, I think that's living at like Numbskull for me.
I think it is Numbskull. Again, flavor and art, ace, S tier, Shambling tier for sure for me. But yeah, actual legitimate playability, I'm with you. It's not unplayable, but it's very, very close if it is not. Jake, we got a weird one here. I actually want to swap the art up on this one because that's the Masters Edition too. And this, baby, look at this frame from that Ice Age set. We got a wonky one here. This one's weird.
Yeah, Skeleton Ship, 1 black, 1 blue, and 3 other for a 0/3 so far. I'm at hard pass.
Ooh.
If at any time you control no islands, bury Skeleton Ship, and then you can tap it to put a -1/-1 counter on target creature. So it gets better. It has a little bit of a removal engine built into it, which is kind of cool. And it is a Dimir legend. If you ever wanted to build Skeleton Tribal, this is the boat that they could all live on, which is kind of neat.
They all come on the Skeleton Ship.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of neat. The Skeleton Ship is kind of like its own last bastion of defense. It's like, well, we better send out the ship since all of the skeletons have died.
It's very interesting to me, Jake, how far we've come. That's a tap ability on a 0/3, and this is a pay 1 life, sack a creature, put a -1/-1 counter on a creature, and draw a card. So it's just like the amount of power creep since this card came out is insanity. However, in a vacuum, I think that this one gets a little extra points because it could be the thematic commander of your skeleton army deck if you wanted that.
Like, you'll never have to worry about that first clause, right? It's just an expensive card. It's just 5 mana for a 0/3, so it's really nothing to write home about. However, for that tap, being able to put a 1/1 or a -1/-1 counter on target creature, that's kind of a big deal, right? I mean, that's going to get around indestructible type situations. That's the kind of thing where you can whittle them down, and then the more that you're able to untap the ship, the better it gets.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't know. It's just expensive to play, and I'm not super high on the card. So, I mean, it might just be the epitome of lazy bones.
Yeah, I think I want to put it at Numbskull. My brain is saying put this at Numbskull, but because it is a legendary and it could be your commander if you wanted a thematic commander, it gets an extra point for me, and I kick it up to lazy bones.
And it does have built-in removal, albeit not great.
Yeah.
It does have -1/-1 counters.
Removal that gets around indestructible. That's not, very slowly, but still.
Very slowly.
It's not the worst possible thing you could do. Let's look at Skitherix, the Blight Dragon next. 2 black, 3 other for a 4/4 dragon skeleton. It's got flying. It's got infect. You can pay a black to give it haste, and you can pay 2 black to regenerate it. Jake, I love this one. This is like a sneaky whoops I won kind of card here. This at the helm of an infect deck. This just in the 99 of an infect deck. This just in an aggro deck like a dragon deck where you can out of nowhere pump Skitherix's power up to 10, give it haste, swing in with 10 infect, say GG to whoever you just absolutely aced at the table. This dragon's got it going on for me.
I think it's great too, man. I really do like Skitherix all the way since it came out. I think it was in Scars of Mirrodin years and years ago. But yeah, I've always liked this card. I think that it's an excellent random win condition, whether you're playing infect or not. Just like you were saying, it can live in the deck as all right, I have done no damage to you. They're like, okay, you're whittling down the other opponents. Right. Now this opponent's like, oh, well, you haven't done any damage to me. Now all of a sudden you have a hasty Skitherix coming out. And it's like, oh, you're not going for the life total. You're going for the infect kill on me. And now they have to deal with this big regenerating dragon skeleton that honestly, I would put it at S tier.
Yeah, I think it's at Shambling for me as well. I mean, you also need to think, Jake, even if you're not going to give it haste, this is like one of the coolest blockers that you can have. It's dealing damage to creatures that it blocks in the form of -1/-1 counters, and for just the 2 mana it's got built-in regeneration. So you don't, and that's before you put any equipment on it that just makes it even doper. I really like this card.
If you're running mono black, you could throw a Lash Wraith on this thing, and then all of a sudden it's just over, dude. Every person that you attack, they need to figure it out or they're dead.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, Blight Dragon is very cool. Big fan of that one. You want to talk about our tiniest little skeleton buddy?
All right, Tiny Bones, which came to us in, this was Jumpstart. 1 black, 1 other for a 1/2. Legendary creature skeleton rogue, and at the beginning of each end step, if an opponent discarded a card this turn, you draw a card and you lose 1 life. We love velocity being built into a commander. And then you do have 2 black and 4 other. Each opponent with no cards in hand loses 10 life. So you have something in here that is a huge life swing if you're able to just get to that point of the game.
Yeah, it hits the board early, and so you've got a good early game with this where it's keeping your hand full as you're casting cards that make your opponents discard or you're activating abilities, whatever. And then it's also got late game. So once everybody's had their hand completely emptied out, 6 mana, recast this for 4, for 6, depending on how many times it's died over the course of the game. And then you're just dumping 6 mana into this. That's not a tap ability. That's just an activation down there. So you can do it as much as you've got mana to do it. Tiny Bones is a very cool mythic, and I love how it represents in Commander early game and late game and velocity. That's just like a perfect trifecta of being a good commander, right?
Yeah, if you build the deck correctly around a discard theme, it doesn't matter that this is a 1/2. It has the damage built in to get there. You just have to make sure that your opponents do not have cards in hand. If they're running like some sort of like blue deck that is running a lot of prosperity and ways to draw cards and stuff like that, then it's going to be more difficult. However, I can't imagine that this is not going to affect at least 1 person in the pod.
Yeah, absolutely. Jake, do you think Tiny Bones belongs at Shambling up at the top, or do you think it comes down to Bonovational?
I think I do. I feel like it does belong at Shambling just because it does feel like kind of like an all-in-one skeleton. If you're going for the discard kind of theme, it works perfectly and synergizes perfectly with that theme, and it does like everything that you want it to do. Discard typically ends with damage being dealt. So like unlike Skitherix, even Skitherix being infect, it's just a different kind of S tier card. I would say it's definitely Shambling.
Yeah, I agree with you. Underworld Sentinel is our last skeleton. We'll rank this one, and then I want to go back and see if we want to readjust any of our rankings based on what we've seen during the video. 2 black, 3 other for a 4/5 Skelly Soldier. When it attacks, you exile target creature card from your graveyard, and then when it dies, you put all cards exiled with it onto the battlefield. This is one of those abilities to me that reads dope, and you're like, oh my god, I can return so many creatures. But then you play it and you realize how slow this is and how chunky it is. I mean, untap, you got to get all the way around unless you got it hasty somehow. It attacks, you're exiling a creature card from your graveyard, already needs to be there. Hopefully you dumped it in there somehow. And then you've got 1. And then it does it around again. If you happen to get a second attack off, then you're finally in good value, but it seems very slow.
It does seem very slow, and it seems like the return, like the basic return I feel like you're gonna get out of this like 9 times out of 10 is 1 card. So you're gonna get it, and on the attack trigger you're gonna exile target creature card from your graveyard. Spoiler alert, it's gonna be the biggest, most impactful thing. And then, you know, when it dies, put all cards exiled with it onto the battlefield. So yeah, they're most likely going to block this 4/5. It does have a nice toughness. I mean, it's a fine cost for what it does. However, I do think its impact is going to leave something to be desired. You do have to have the right card in the yard. So if you do have some like big beefy Praetor or something, you are going to be able to get it. But I think I put it at mid tier. I don't think it's unplayable.
No, I don't think it's unplayable.
It might be
I
like
think
a
it's
numbskull for me.
Yeah, I think it's a fun skeleton. I have to look at it through this lens. I have to go, okay, right. So early game, I don't have anything in my graveyard, so I don't really want to play this curved out on 5. Late game, for 5 mana, I could just cast Rise from the Grave, the uncommon Rise from the Grave, and get the exact target that I want right then, right back onto the battlefield. Get Skitherix right onto the battlefield, activate the hasty, and go to town. I don't want to play Underworld Sentinel, then get all the way back around to my turn, then it attacks, then it passes, and get all the way back around if it survives, and then you're fine. Yeah. So I agree with you, man.
It's like, and I wait a whole turn. I swing with my 4/5, and they're like, cool. I block with my 6/6.
Yeah, done.
It dies.
And
all right, now
else?
now. In the second main phase, this is on the battlefield and it is waiting for the next turn.
Right.
So yeah,
Jake,
I see what you're saying.
I have 2 adjustments that I want to suggest we make to our final list after seeing the power level of some of the cards that we saw. I think that Gutter Bones sneaks down into the Lazy Bone territory, and I think Death Tyrant sneaks down into Bonevational Speaker. Do you agree with those adjustments, or do you think it was good like it was?
I think Death Tyrant stays up there at Shambling. I really don't know what more you want out of a card. We could take a look at that one more time, but I really just think that
it's a lot. I mean, it's got Menace, it's got a 6 butt, it's attacking creatures you control dying, turn into 2/2s. It's blocking creatures opponents control dying turn. Yeah, and it returns for 6. Yeah, you're right. It's really good.
Yeah, it's just so good. And when we're comparing it to just the other skeletons, I think it's just leagues ahead. I would put it up there with Tiny Bones, although Tiny Bones is a lot closer to the ground. All of them do. I think you were right with Gutter Bones coming down to Lazy Bones. I think that's fine. It's a low to the ground skeleton, which is good.
Yeah.
However, it's just kind of, you know, it leaves a little bit to be desired, and it does require other stuff for it to be very strong. The other cards, the Golgari Grave Troll, just absolute gas for that strategy. Skitherix is a win con by itself. Tiny Bones is the commander. It's like the best skeleton commander possible. And then the Beholder just kind of feels like an all-in-one. It's like your trading post of skeletons.
Yep. So that's how they're going to fall out. Everybody watching, let us know which ones we got wrong in your opinion. We want to talk to y'all about this in the comments. Other than that, have a spooky Halloween. Jake, I'm tapped out.
And let us know what tribe you want us to do next.
Yes, we will rank them according to our strange ranking system. It's a pretty straightforward ranking system. It's just the same ranking system, but funny names.